Mobile Fighter G Gundam is a different beast. After the rather lackluster attempt at revitalizing the Universal Century timeline of the Gundam franchise with the not-so-victorious Victory Gundam, Sunrise would decide to just take a wild direction with it. For the first alternate timeline in the history of Gundam, the series would tackle the wide-ranging genre of shonen battle anime. Of course, shonen had been popular since the 60s at the very least. I mean, you can actually trace the history of shonen back to the late 1800s, but that's a topic for another video. Of course, anime in 1994 was currently basking in the afterglow of one of the best shonen arcs of all time, the Cell Games saga of Dragon Ball Z. So what better time could there possibly be for the Gundam series to say screw it and throw everything out the window? I won't mince words here. I absolutely love G Gundam, and yes, I am 100% biased towards this show. A lot of people were introduced to the franchise with 1995's Gundam Wing, but me, I was introduced to Gundam way back in 2002 with Mobile Fighter G Gundam. I still remember catching random episodes after school and making fun of some of the ridiculous designs. I mean, hell, me and my friends still make fun of the Windmill Gundam to this day. While a lot of G Gundam's ideas don't seem like they would work on paper, it's the show's enduring, lovable silliness that just draws me in. It makes a lot of the missteps that the series takes very easy to overlook. Not to mention that it's just sorta hard to be mad at the show. It's just so pure in its stupidity. Plus the score is top 3 for Gundam music easy. You can watch Shining Finger go off 25 times, but it's always hype because of that song.
Here I go! Shining
The music actually evokes notes of the Char's Counterattack OST in particular, with a big emphasis on brass instruments. Plus it's the 90s, so we get a bunch more awesome saxophone. I'll also admit that for the purpose of this video, I did succumb to the nostalgia and watch the dub. It is really something special, let me tell you. Literally perfect 90s bad but good dubbing.
You may have those silver feet, but I've got these gold fingers!
Hats off to the voice actors in this show though. They do a pretty good job delivering the lines that anyone would have a hard time making sound good. The English voice actor for the main character, Domon Kashu, is really memorable in particular.
Here I go! This hand of mine is burning red! Its loud roar tells me to grasp victory! Erupting, burning finger! And now, he did it!
And yes, while there are still some stilted reads here and there, I mean, just listen to how good his burning finger is. Mobile Fighter G Gundam at its core is an action-based tournament battling show, though by the end it becomes something a little weirder. Which is good, because for a show that wears the clothes of a series-long tournament arc, G Gundam's Gundam fight has rules that are at first not very well defined, and eventually just thrown completely out the window. In the end, the structure of the actual tournament is secondary to delivering the audience some pure super robot spectacle. With the spectacle comes a cast of very specifically diverse characters, as the setting of a world-spanning tournament gives the writers ample opportunity to introduce a cast from all across the globe. Of course, a lot of the different cultural depictions rely heavily on stereotype, though honestly I think a lot of it is just so silly that it isn't offensive at all. Like the Neo France Gundam hangar is a giant snail with a garage door on it. Holland's Gundam is literally a windmill. The show just sort of pokes fun at everyone, but it never goes beyond a surface level. Anyway, let's get into the weirdest Gundam story so far. The anime begins by explaining its basic premise through the narrative device of a literal on-screen narrator. That's the one thing I love about this show, it really wears its heart on its sleeve right from the start. The Earth is seen as a bunch of flaming objects hurtle towards the surface. In this world, the colonies have decided to forego war in favor of having an event called the Gundam Fight. Every 4 years, the colonies send a Gundam fighter to Earth to participate in a battle royale style tournament to determine which country will rule the universe until the next bout. When they say that the Earth is the ring, they really mean it. A literal beam ring encircles the planet during the Gundam fight, and collateral damage to the Earth's cities is disregarded by the various world governments. The planet is in pretty terrible shape. Even in the opening episodes, we can see places like New York City and Paris are crumbling. The people of the Earth are barely scraping by and feel deserted by the colony's citizens. Our main character, Domon Kashu, is one of the most 90s anime protagonists that I've ever seen. Domon, also known as the King of Hearts, one of the 5 masters of martial arts, is actually the first adult main Gundam protagonist in a full series, being 20 years old at the beginning of the show. He carries a torn picture of a mysterious man with him and has the tendency to ask every person he meets if they've seen this man.
Do you know this man?
Domon's search at a rundown bar doesn't last very long as he gets wrapped up with the police and a gang of bikers. He does figure out that the lead biker, Michelo Chariot, is actually the Gundam fighter from Neo Italy, and this leads to an official Gundam fight. These fights are pretty formulaic, to be honest, at least for the first half of the series. Domon spends a good amount of most fights getting slapped around until he's able to unleash his special attack, the Shining Finger. I really don't mind this formula. I am a seasoned shonen anime watcher, but I can see how people wouldn't like the pacing that comes along with it. Shining Finger is an amazing finishing move, by the way, and a lot of that is attributed directly to Domon's voice actor. As per Gundam Fight regulations, any fighter whose head unit is destroyed is disqualified from the tournament and cannot move on to the finals, and so Domon uses his Shining Finger to crush the head of Neros Gundam, knocking Michelo out of the tournament. As far as main characters go, wow, they really went for something different with Domon. Besides being older than most other protagonists, he's also much more physically capable, like the guy catches bullets in episode 1. One thing that this means for Domon's arc as a character is that he has to rely more on growing emotionally than in strength. Really, his strength is already there and sufficient from the start, but his maturity and ability to control his impulses are what his character development focuses on, and it works very well. Not that the writing is anything phenomenal or something that you haven't seen before, but hey, it's better than nothing. Along with Domon, we're introduced to his partner Rain Mikamura, practicing doctor and mechanic in charge of keeping Neo Japan's Shining Gundam repaired. She serves as a level-headed foil to Domon, whose brash attitude often gets him in over his head. Rain is also quite capable herself, as we see her pilot the Shining Gundam and later the Rising Gundam with various amounts of success. The show then goes on to follow this formula throughout the next few episodes, introducing us to the show's fairly expansive supporting cast. Episode 2 brings us all the way to New York as Domon takes on Neo America's Chibody Crockett, a man who wishes to achieve the American dream. He does fight Domon in a match and ultimately loses but is spared. As long as Chibody's Gundam Maxter has an intact head, he can repair the rest and continue on in the tournament. Chibody also knew nothing about the man in the picture, and Domon crosses Neo America off the list of fighters he needs to interrogate. The next few episodes introduce us to Neo China's Sai Saishi, who hopes to reinstate the Shaolin Temple and follow in his father's footsteps, though he often gives in to his childish urge to cause mischief. George Descend is a noble fighter from Neo, France. He's actually one of the only fighters in the show who actually cares about the honor of his nation, and puts that before himself. George is also a sworn knight that protects the Princess Maria Louise throughout the course of the show, including from Domon, who pretends to kidnap her in order to get a match with George. Finally is one of my favorite characters in the entire show, Argo Gulski, the fighter representing Neo-Russia. Argo is literally a prisoner of the Russian government after being captured for being a space pirate. Now, they hold his friends and comrades hostage, promising to release them if Argo wins the Gundam fight for them. I actually really like the introductory episode for Argo, as it involves Domon being arrested by Neo-Russia and then escaping prison before fighting Argo's Bolt Gundam. The first 5 episodes do a lot to introduce us to the colorful cast of characters that inhabit the world of Mobile Fighter G Gundam. Domon is a protagonist who only pilots his Gundam as a means to an end while on the search for someone that's close to him. And the mechs themselves can do just about anything. Of course, Gundam to this point has been firmly rooted in the real robot subgenre of mecha fiction, but Mobile Fighter G Gundam is unabashedly in the super robot camp, and it is not apologizing for it. Now that we have our cast of characters introduced and all set, the show feels that it's appropriate to set the audience down for an episode-long info dump. Domon is knocked out and kidnapped by agents of Neo Japan, who bring him back to space and aboard the Neo Japan colony. Neo Japan's supporting cast is almost as colorful as the fighters down on Earth. We have Major Lube, who wears a half mask and is in charge of the colony's armed forces. He's fairly unremarkable throughout most of the series and is really only there to fill the audience in on much needed exposition. In a similar situation is Commissioner Corrado, the short, broad man who leads the colony government. Along with those two is Rain's father, Dr. Mikamura, who by the way doesn't ever drop his first name, I don't think, who helps out with Gundam diagnostics, and had a hand in the overall design of the Shining Gundam. These three, along with Rain, who participates very begrudgingly, set up a sort of simulation where Domon has to relive the day his family was essentially destroyed. It would seem that the man in Domon's picture is none other than his brother Kyoji Kashu. Kyoji and his father Raizo worked tirelessly to create something known as the Devil Gundam. Quick side note here, I did watch the dub, which replaced a few names like Devil Gundam with Dark Gundam. They also renamed the God Gundam that we see later on to Burning Gundam, which honestly is pretty cool anyway. I'm going to refer to the main antagonist as the Devil Gundam from here on out, but Burning Gundam is here to stay, sorry. This giant mobile suit is able to self-replicate and self-repair, and it truly is a marvel of modern technology. The Neo Japan government also thinks so, as they catch wind that Kyoji plans to use the Devil Gundam to take over the Earth. This seems like quite the accusation, but Kyoji just sort of admits to it, fleeing to the Earth while destroying a bunch of stuff in the process. Dr. Kashu is then sentenced to cryogenic suspension for his part in developing the Devil Gundam, offering to let him out only if Domon can win the Gundam fight while representing Neo Japan. Domon is pretty pissed off when he figures out that Neo Japan tricked him into reliving that day. It's also pointed out that Domon wasn't actually present for these events, and the whole thing is just what Ulube has said happened, which adds another layer of mystery to the Devil Gundam's origins. Overall, they pretty much did this to Domon to drop a bunch of exposition, but also to reaffirm his willingness to be their Gundam fighter. He then goes back to Earth to continue on with the tournament. We now get another arc where Domon travels from country to country, searching for clues about Kyoji and the Devil Gundam. The difference now is that usually one of the supporting cast of characters will pop up to help or hinder Domon depending upon the situation. For instance, in one episode, Domon helps out George by fighting the Gundam fighter from Neo England, Gentle Chapman. Chapman is a former 3-times champion, but now he seems to have resorted to using cheap tricks like smokescreens and drone suits to get an upper hand. It's only later in the episode that we find out that Chapman is dying and Domon is able to win when his painkillers wear out. We make our way to Neo Turkey, where Domon is shocked to find out that the Gundam fighter there is a man named Saeed. who also happens to be a former ex of Rain. Neo Turkey's Scythe Gundam has been running rampant recently, and it's all because of something called DG cells. Devil Gundam cells have begun to take over Saeed's body, turning him into a raging freak. Rain is able to get through to him before the military has to kill him, and he's able to be cured of the cell's influence. Now, this is a development that sort of comes out of left field in this part of show. Devil Gundam cells are these weird liquid metal cells that combine with organic matter, and if the infection reaches the brain, they become a thrall to the Devil Gundam. When I first watched this show, I really did not expect it to take a turn like this. The Devil Gundam is more like a huge monster or force of nature than an actual character, and at this point we really don't know what to expect from it or what it's capable of. Honestly, there's a lot more to this than a normal tournament fighting storyline, even if a lot of it is just kinda out there and not super well written. Domon and Rain receive news that the Devil Gundam may have surfaced in Shinjuku, and so they travel to Neo Japan. Here they run into the Devil Army, a mass of drone mobile suits that have multiplied due to the influence of the Devil Gundam. Luckily for Domon and Rain, a mysterious masked man shows up and absolutely trashes the army suits with his bare hands. Domon immediately recognizes his own fighting style and realizes that the masked man is none other than his old teacher, known as the Undefeated of the East, Master Asia.
Answer me, Domon. The school of the undefeated in the East.
The winds of the king!
Zenshin!
Keiretsu!
Tenpa Kyoran! Look! The East is burning red! How have you been, Domon? Or rather, the man I acknowledge as the King of Hearts.
Master Asia is awesome, by the way, and his team-up attacks with Domon are absolutely ridiculous. It's also nice to see Domon actually happy to be around someone for once. Watching him interact with Master Asia shows that he does have another side to his character, and he's not just a hot-blooded angry dude all the time. This next arc is actually pretty interesting, considering the beginning of the show was just 1v1 fights for the most part. Here in Shinjuku, most of the buildings are in ruins, with only a single skyscraper left standing in the downtown area. The defenders have been there working with Master Asia to fight off the Devil Army, but have ground to a standstill. However, now that Domon has arrived, Master Asia believes their combined might could be enough to drive them off. Things aren't all that they seem to be, as Domon and Master Asia launch a mission to save survivors that they believe should be trapped in a nearby radio tower. Rain decides to follow the old master into the tunnels beneath the city. She comes across a bunch of pods containing horrifying Devil Gundam techno-zombies and all the supporting members of the other country's Gundam fighter teams. Which is lucky because Domon has been fighting all 4 of his rivals on the surface, who appear to have been taken over by DG cells. A pretty intimidating vampire bat-inspired mech named the Master Gundam shows up and gives Domon quite a hard time. Eventually, it is revealed that Master Asia is under the influence of Kyoji and has been working to resurrect the Devil Gundam. Domon defies his former master, but his shining finger cannot overpower the Master Gundam's darkness finger. Luckily for Domon, a group of martial artists known as the Shuffle Alliance show up and bail him out. They greet him as the King of Hearts, though this is the first time that they've met him, and it's implied that Master Asia, who was the former King of Hearts, passed on his crest to Domon prematurely. The Shuffle Alliance assist in getting Domon to Master Asia after announcing that their goal is to stop him. Domon climbs Tokyo Tower to confront Asia at the peak while the Alliance keeps his rivals at bay. They actually realize that these 4 Gundam fighters are the successors of the Shuffle Alliance, and the old guard pass on their crests in order to break the Devil Gundam's influence. Unfortunately, in order to do this, they have to give up their own lives, but they're only in 2 episodes, so that's okay, I guess. Domon is able to activate the Shining Gundam Super Mode, and it gives him enough power to drive back Master Asia, and he retreats. Even after winning the battle, Domon wants to chase after Master Asia, but before the Alliance can regroup, a giant earthquake racks Japan, opening up a huge hole in Shinjuku, causing the Alliance to fall in. They all get split up into various groups while exploring the underground, and we learn that the Devil Gundam was actually down here sleeping all along. It blasts through the surface, and Domon attempts to stop it, but his shining finger has absolutely no impact on the Devil Gundam. Schwarz Bruder, the Gundam fighter representing Neo Germany, is introduced at the tail end of this arc, and he's a pretty cool guy. In fact, he beats Domon's ass pretty easily. When Domon is being headstrong and insisting that the Shining Gundam's super mode is enough to beat the Devil Gundam, Schwarz hands him a sword and tells him to train instead. It's only when Bruder beats him that Domon takes his words to heart and returns to the Guiana Highlands where Master Asia trained him as a kid.
Domon Kashu. Right now, you're nothing more than someone high on the fact that he's a bit better than others.
This arc was actually a pretty nice change of pace from the Gundam of the Week type episodes we'd seen so far. Seeing the fighters defend civilians from the Devil Army is great, and Master Asia is just a wonderful villain. He's so much fun to watch and have on screen. And I gotta say, I'm pretty glad they decided to introduce a concrete antagonist at this point, because the overarching threat of the Devil Gundam hasn't had much of a driving force in the first half of the show. From here we get a training arc, with Domon and Rain chilling in the wilderness, hoping to unlock the true power of Shining Gundam's super mode. Of course, the other members of the Shuffle Alliance show up in the Highlands one by one as well, hoping that Domon can help with their specific individual problems. They aren't amazing episodes by any means, and this is the part of the show that I would say is the worst pacing out of the whole run, but it's fun to see all the characters interact with each other, especially when Bruder continues to show up to taunt and motivate Domon simultaneously. There's just something about a masked German ninja that I can't get over. Eventually, the Devil Army and Master Asia show up. With only 3 days until the finals of the Gundam fight, Domon has to fend off both while attempting to complete his training. The whole point being that the super mode can never defeat Master Asia or the Devil Gundam when it's activated through anger, and Domon has to achieve the true super mode through a serene state of mind. The Devil Gundam finally wakes up in the Guiana Highlands, and the Shuffle Alliance fights both it and the Devil Army to allow Domon time to repair the Shining Gundam. The Alliance and Rain eventually leave for the finals, while Domon and Bruder decide to have a final showdown with Master Asia. Domon's rage overtakes him as Asia taunts him relentlessly, causing him to go on a rampage. It's only when Bruder's cockpit takes a direct hit from Master Asia and he's critically injured that Domon remembers his training and is able to easily beat down Master Asia using his true super mode. He then seemingly destroys the Devil Gundam as well, and after all this, the Shining Gundam is in pretty bad shape. Neo Japan's staff sends a brand new machine to the Guiana Highlands, the Burning Gundam, and Domon sacrifices the Shining Gundam in an attempt to reach the cockpit. Master Asia still hasn't given up even though he's on his last legs, but after Rain is able to transfer the combat data from the Shining to Burning Gundam through the use of a weird brainwave helmet, Domon finishes him off and makes it to Neo Hong Kong for the finals just in the nick of time. Despite being supposedly destroyed along with the Devil Gundam, Master Asia shows up as the defending champion of the Gundam fight, representing Neo Hong Kong. Along with both Mikkolo Chariot and Gentle Chapman, who were knocked out of the tournament early on by Domon. The current Prime Minister, Wang Yun-fat, declares that these fighters are able to continue, and that during the finals, the pilots' cockpits may now be targeted. Wang has been a background character, much like Lube or Karato up until now, but he'll soon take the spotlight as a secondary antagonist, as he works alongside Master Asia to rig all the matches against Domon. He puts the Neo Japan fighter into unfair tag team matches and uses dirty tricks like a giant magnet, among other things, to try and get Domon to lose. And this is all because Wang and Master Asia intend to try and revive the damaged Devil Gundam. It turns out that Kyoji was almost killed after the events in the Guiana Highlands, and the Devil Gundam needs a new core to fully repair. The two now scheme to make Domon the perfect fighter in order to take Kyoji's place. Also introduced in the tournament finals arc is the fighter from Neo Sweden, Allenby Beardsley. Allenby is basically female Domon. She's full of energy, a natural fighter, and the two instantly hit it off after fighting a simulation battle together. When Domon and Allenby fight their match against each other in the finals, they're happy to test each other's skills. Allenby's support team feels otherwise, using something called the Berserker system to make Allenby freak out and increase her combat abilities exponentially. Domon refuses to fight her any further, declaring that it's no longer any fun, and is able to help Allenby break free of the system and come back to her senses. Unfortunately, she passes out and the match goes to Domon. Schwartz uses his ninja skills to snoop around the government buildings of Neo Hong Kong, where he discovers the slumbering Devil Gundam. While escaping, Bruder spots Rain and carries her to safety. She remarks that Bruder reminds her of someone familiar, but she just can't place it. Domon then has to fight the other members of the new Shuffle Alliance one after another in a set of decisive battles. I have to say, we knew this would happen from the start, right? It is a tournament show after all. Anyway, these episodes are actually some of my favorites in the whole series. In particular, the matches that Domon fights against Chippity Crockett and then Argo Gulski are two of the best fights in the entire show. Of course, in a video like this, I have to skip a bunch of details or we'll be here all day. But when you're watching the series, you end up spending a lot of time with these characters, and these types of battles have been built up since the very beginning. It's hard not to get a little hype for it. Before Domon is able to face Master Asia, Wong has one more trump card to play against him. A final bout between Domon and his pseudo-mentor Schwartz Bruder is set up, and even though a match between these two would be exciting enough, Wong goes one step further. The ring is encircled with time bombs, and Domon is fighting with no support, as Rain has apparently flipped sides and is working for Neo Germany due to a disagreement about Domon and Allenby's relationship. Domon is able to win the match once he realizes that he can't win all by himself and asks Rain for help. Of course, the bombs go off anyway, and while both pilots survive, Schwartz is hurt and ultimately unmasked. Finally, we're able to see the true face of the Neo Germany pilot, and it's none other than Domon's brother Kyoji. Now, this is a huge revelation, as Domon was sure his brother was evil and the entire reason all of this happened, but now it's revealed that his mentor was his brother all along, kind of. He's actually an android that is mostly made up of DG cells, but was able to retain his memory as Schwartz. But either way, he's in a hospital in critical condition and won't be taking part in the rest of the tournament. With Domon being victorious over his 5 rivals, they all agree to fulfill their duties as members of the Shuffle Alliance and help him fight the Devil Gundam. But the tournament is not over, and there is one final stage. All the surviving fighters are pitted against each other in a large battle royale located on Lantel Island. Nothing can ever be this easy though, as Allenby has been kidnapped by Wong in an attempt to use her instead of Domon as the Devil Gundam core. Wong does this because he and Master Asia have had increasingly serious disagreements with his methods during the Gundam fight, and Wong wants the Devil Gundam's power for himself. The members of the Shuffle Alliance join together to defend Domon from both Michelob Chariot and Gentle Chapman, who are now fully under the control of the Devil Gundam. An enraged Allenby that is also under the control of DG Cells attacks Domon, who is only saved by the timely intervention of Rain. I kinda love this part actually. Rain gets the Rising Gundam, which is the former Gundam piloted by Major Alube when he was a Gundam fighter. Where is Alube anyway? We haven't seen him since he went back up into space. I mean, I'm sure he's doing fine. Anyway, Rain is able to pull Allenby away from Domon and back to the Hong Kong arena. Schwartz shows up again, explaining that he was able to keep his consciousness while taking over the body of Neo Germany's fighter when he was exposed to DG cells. He's now a mirror image of Kyoji, who's trapped in the Devil Gundam as its power source. It is ultimately revealed that the Devil Gundam was originally called the Ultimate Gundam and was being developed by Domon's father and brother. Its original intention was to use its self-restoring and self-replicating AI to restore the damaged Earth. Rain's father, Dr. Mikamura, becomes super jealous of his friend's work and tells the military that Dr. Kashu wants to use the Ultimate Gundam to take over the colony. The military, along with Major Alube and Dr. Mikamura, go to arrest Kyoji and Dr. Kashu, but when they show up, there's a fight and they shoot and kill Domon's mother. Kyoji is able to escape in the Ultimate Gundam, but due to its impact with the Earth, the AI inside malfunctioned, and it realized the best way to renew the Earth was to destroy all of humanity. Schwartz knows the only way Domon can destroy the Devil Gundam is to take him and Kyoji with it, so he pulls a Goku and sacrifices himself. This leaves Domon to have a final awesome showdown with Master Asia and his Master Gundam. I stand by saying Master Asia is a great villain to watch, and I forgot to mention that he also has a giant mech horse, and yes, it's piloted by a real horse whose name is Funsaiki. It's absolutely ridiculous, and the perfect example of the stupid shit this show does that I love so much. The two have a great final fight, and in the end, Domon stands victorious before his old master. Master Asia reveals that he was never controlled by the DG cells, and truly believed in the mission of renewing the Earth. Domon and Master Asia recite their school's mantra once more while the sun sets. Domon is finally victorious and is the champion of the 13th Gundam fight, although he's worried more about Rain than he is with the celebrations. Rain blames herself for her father's actions and ends up returning to the colony. It turns out that this show isn't quite done yet, as Major Alube reveals himself to be the true villain in the end. He shoots Dr. Mikimura and kidnaps Rain, planning to use her as a new core to the Devil Gundam. Alube dispatches Neo Japan's warships to recover the Devil Gundam's body, and nice Easter egg here, as Neo Japan's ships are very similar to Zeon ships. There are actually a ton of Easter eggs in the coming episodes, with the original Gundam showing up and the wing being on screen for a few seconds. Alube announces that he's going to end the Gundam fight as he now controls a newly revived Devil Gundam, and yeah, this thing just kinda gets revived like a million times throughout this series. Domon and the Shuffle Alliance end up going to space in the final few episodes, and with the help of the newly formed Gundam Federation, including all the fighters Domon has defeated in the past, they're able to blow past the colony's defenses. The Devil Gundam sprouts giant, awesome wings and is as huge as the entire colony at this point, and Domon ends up having to journey inside of its core to recover Rain, who's made of metal and stuck in this big weird egg. Domon saves Rain by admitting his true love for her, and the two join forces to launch a final attack, destroying the Devil Gundam and Alube once and for all. Domon decides to go to Earth with Rain at his side to live on the planet that his master loved so much. And there we have it, Mobile Suit Gundam's first foray into alternate universes, not counting SD Gundam, shut up, and the shonen genre as a whole.
Yes, our true journey begins now, Rain.
Now, I personally absolutely love this show. It was my third time seeing it all the way through, and it's the first piece of Gundam media that I ever even laid my eyes on. But I do understand why someone might mark this entry down as one of their least favorite in the entire series. It is very different, and it makes no apologies for those differences. If you're looking for a show that has deep introspective themes and mature ways of presenting them, well, you're not getting that here. If you want hot-blooded shouting, plenty of crazy super robot action, and your own home country boiled down into a giant stereotype in the form of a robot, then hey, G Gundam is for you. I feel like you also really need to enjoy the 90s style to watch G Gundam and really enjoy it. I mean, there's just no getting around that. Luckily, for those that do wish to partake, G Gundam is pretty easy to find, both on a lot of streaming services and on Blu-ray. One great thing I do want to mention is that this show is great to just throw on in the background while going about your day, and is a series where you can just put on any episode. Now, as far as success goes, Sunrise did a pretty good job on raising people's spirits after the failure of Victory Gundam. Mobile Fighter G Gundam really put a shot in the arm of the entire franchise, and its toy sales were through the roof. Of course, the West would eventually get the show as well, and run it on the legendary Toonami anime block, where it would cement itself as a memorable piece of anime history. Until Gundam Wing came out later.